who is the officer in charge of FAO's Office of Innovation, as well as the Director of Office of Strategy, Planning and Resource Management of FAO. And Beth will officially welcome our webinar and give us some opening remarks. Beth, over to you.
Thank you very much, Degi, and hello, everybody. Dear participants, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues from across the organization, it's a real pleasure to be with you here today. And for today's side event on multi-stakeholder policy dialogue processes to support agricultural innovation, we'll have concrete experiences from Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Colombia, and Malawi. So for this event, we've assembled a fantastic panel of experts with rich experiences in policy processes for agricultural innovation from diverse contexts across the globe. I would like to welcome and thank the esteemed panelists who will be introduced to you later, but for joining us today. So we have with us Carlo Azzari, Sofia Bokvist, Adama Boro, Guy For, Juan Lucas Restrepo, Can Sarut, and Sarah Tione as our panelists, and we're looking forward to hearing from them during the panel discussion. So in addition to our wonderful panelists and presenters here in this webinar, this event is also about exchange, discussion, and learning together with you all, the participants. Thus, I would like to encourage you all to participate actively in today's event by engaging in the discussions and asking questions throughout the webinar. This side event, which is organized by the FAO Office of Innovation, is part of FAO's Science and Innovation Forum for 2022, which has many side events this week and the main forum taking place next week. The Science and Innovation Forum 2022 aims to highlight the centrality of science, technology, and innovation for agri-food systems transformation. In order to facilitate the important role of science, technologies, and innovation, or STIs, in bringing about sustainable agri-food systems transformation, a favorable enabling environment is necessary. And a fundamental part of this enabling environment is the policies in place at the national, regional, and global levels. We at FAO support policies that are inclusive, efficient, and conducive to innovation in agri-food systems, because we know that innovation is key to reaching a world free from poverty, hunger, and malnutrition. So this side event today will feature experiences and insights on multi-stakeholder policy processes to support agricultural innovation from international experts, policymakers from 4 countries, and from FAO's Office of Innovation. When it comes to policy processes, including formulation, implementation, and analysis of policy, there are multiple context-dependent approaches. Yet some approaches are better suited to generating policy outcomes that enable instead of hinder agricultural innovation. Through the EU-funded TAP-AIS project, FAO has been working in 9 countries to support capacity development in agricultural innovation systems. An important element of this is the multi-stakeholder policy dialogue processes to address context-specific policies in agricultural innovation in each country. These experiences thus far from the TAP-AIS project have demonstrated the importance of engaging diverse stakeholders of the agri-food system in policy dialogue to discuss and find solutions to important policy issues. These issues are best discussed and addressed at the level at which they are felt most, which most often means a bottom-up approach is needed. And in agri-food systems, this of course means farmers and their organizations, small and medium-sized agribusinesses, and more should be engaged in policy dialogue processes. An inclusive multi-stakeholder process of not only policy making, but also implementation and review will ensure that policies are well suited to different contexts to support agricultural innovation and thus agri-food systems transformation. Today's discussion will hopefully spur your thinking and possibly generate new ideas about ways in which this can happen. We look forward to hearing from the experts and also practicing what we preach by having a truly multi-stakeholder and inclusive dialogue today with you all, the participants. Thank you all again for joining us, and best of luck for an open and productive discussion today on this very important topic. Thank you, and over to you, Degi.
Thank you so much, Beth, for that opening remarks. So before moving to the next part, just a short housekeeping. We have Q&A box where I invite you to put your questions throughout the discussion and event. And we have a chat where you can network and exchange ideas. And also, we want this webinar to be as interactive as possible. Webinar can be so chat. Let us really use chat to interact with each other. Okay, so I already see a lot of people. We have just about 90 participants so far, and from various regions in Argentina, Nepal, a lot from Africa. So this is super great. So next is an introduction to our talk and discussion. My colleague Pierre Rudebert, the Senior Capacity Development Specialist at FAO, will make a short presentation on creating an enabling environment for innovation through policy dialogue processes. Pierre, over to you.
Thank you very much, Degi, and welcome again, all of you, to this side event. I would need to sort out my system here. Yes, now we are together, I think. Just one second. Okay. So, yes, to provide a little bit of background and to set the scene for this multi-stakeholder policy dialogue process and panel discussion we are having today, I put together a small number of slides just to introduce the topic to you all. FAO has been for a long time working on agriculture innovation system with funding from the European Union and in collaboration with a tropical agriculture platform. And we see that agri-food systems, they tend to be transformed by a dynamic and very rapidly changing interaction, which involves socioeconomic and environmental factors. Markets are changing quickly, demography are changing quickly, climate change. Consumers are more interested in what their food is coming from. ICT is evolving very rapidly. So there is a quite complex environment in which agriculture innovation happens, which requires multi-stakeholder interaction. And this is a kind of collaboration which goes way beyond the technology transfer paradigm that we often find out there. There are also very important links to other sectors, such as human health, for example. When we talk about food and nutrition strategy, human health has to be there as well. There is a combination of local, indigenous, and scientific knowledge. Partnership, collaboration, coordination is coming up very strongly in agriculture innovation systems. And we are looking at both technical and functional capacities. Functional capacities being the soft skills that the systems needs. And the Tropical Agriculture Platform has developed a conceptual diagram of this agriculture innovation system, which has the main building blocks, which you see here in this diagram. And at the bottom here, you have a box with the enabling environment that is influencing all the actors in this system, whether they are in research extension, whether they are bridging institutions, whether there are business enterprise and small and medium enterprises, for example. So in this panel discussion, we are going to explore the enabling environment a little bit more. So the key here is that this provides incentives for the different actors of the innovation system, or conversely, the enabling environment may present roadblocks and constraints that are blocking the innovation actors for doing what they would like to do. The enabling environment is beyond the actors' direct control. It depends on outside factors. There are both formal and informal elements. And as we said, the non-agriculture sector is also playing a very important role in providing ICT connectivity, science and technology strategies, trade and finance are very important. So this environment is looking at a number of different dimensions. We have, of course, policy. We have legal and regulatory framework that people need to observe. And there is the governance, how all this is managed in the various institutions and organizations we have. Infrastructure provides a very important element in the system. And we have institutional and cultural aspects that can be very important as well. So this enabling environment is influencing organization, influencing individuals, and has an impact on the interaction between these different levels. So by the end of the day, policy aims at influencing behavior of those actors in the innovation system, whether they are at local level or systems level. So question is how efficient are these policies working? We know there are so many projects producing policy briefs, for example. To what extent do they really influence this policy process? So in the project we are working on, we have on one hand a policy cycle that is taking place in the different countries where we work, where policymakers constantly are sensing what's going on in their environment. They try to improve policy design and implementation and so on. On the other hand, we have the local actors where policy is being brought into use. So feedback from these stakeholders that are really the central actors of an innovation system, it's very important. And in our project, we are engaging in a policy dialogue process to be able to link those two sides. And this multi-stakeholder policy dialogue process is taking place in 9 countries. You have them on the map here. This is also very much a capacity development process, as we are engaging with people who perhaps not normally are really, in contact with the policymakers. We organize policy consultation at both local and national levels. We identify constraints and we prioritize those issues. And we have a policy dialogue event where we can exchange views and decide together where we need to go, develop recommendations, action plans, policy briefs. So this is now in progress in at least 7 of the 9 project countries, and we are happy to have 4 of these countries with us in today's panel discussion. So that was a very brief background to hopefully set the scene for an effective panel discussion today. And I hand over again to my colleague, Degi Shulun Batar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Per. Thanks for that presentation. And I also see that there are a lot of experts who are already working in this field as an attendance. So we will be sharing experience from 4 countries where this project is working with, but you have also other experiences and other examples that has similar process going on. And we would like to learn about those. So if you can also share relevant information, links, projects that you would like us to visit, please share them in the chat also. Okay, so now we have a panel discussion with 7 esteemed panelists. They're all from mixed background and experiences, sharing global versus country level perspectives. Let me call them one by one to join me on the screen. First, we have Sofia Bogist from Swedish University of Agriculture Science. She is also a director of agrifood program 2030. Then we have Carlo Azzari, senior research fellow at the International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI. Then we have Guy Ford, senior policy officer at European Commission, in charge of research and innovation. Then we have Juan Lucas Restrepo. He's a global director of partnership and advocacy at CGIAR, as well as Director General of Alliance of Biodiversity International and International Center for Tropical Agriculture, CIAT. Now we have His Excellency Chan Sarut, Under Secretary of State, Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries in Cambodia. Dr. Sarut is also a chair of Executive Board of Conservation Agriculture and Sustainable Intensification Consortium, called CASIC, in Cambodia. Now, last but not least, we have Sarah Tione, Principal Economist at the Ministry of Agriculture, Department of Planning and Policy Unit in Malawi. Very welcome. We have very rich and very big panel here. And so just very quickly, objective of this event is this panel is really to discuss innovation and policy interface, and to share concrete experiences on how to overcome policy challenges to enable innovation. So let's start from Carlo and Sofia, sharing more global perspective, and then we can go to the country level. Sofia, so the program agrifood 2030 is about research, policy, and practice nexus, with focus on promoting science-based innovation for smallholder producers, and it's implemented in different regions. Can you tell us what are the key learnings so far, and how can we better marry this very important nexus, research, policy, and practice in concrete terms? Thank you, Sofia.
Thank you very much. It's a very relevant question. So first, I would like just to mention that agrifood stands for Agriculture for Food Security, and it's a program that is funded by SIDA here in Sweden. And it's been operating for a little bit more than 6 years now. This program focuses on bridging the gap between science and policy and practice. So in this context, I sort of represent the research parts, and I'm a researcher myself. And the key learnings we had in this program since the start, looking from the perspective of the research community, is that there is a general will from the research community and academia to engage in these processes, aiming to improve policy to support food security. And we have experienced when we work on the platforms where we try to co-create and generate new knowledge in dialogue with various local and regional stakeholders, from policymakers to researchers, farmers organizations, so forth, is that the attendance of the research community is highly appreciated, because in some places they are a little bit sidestepped almost. And the experience from some of the projects we've had, that once we have created these platforms where we can have this knowledge sharing and connecting scientists to policymakers, this process sort of also becomes sort of self-generating. So with quite small means, we can contribute to real changes by just pushing them a little bit further. And another thing that has become very clear for us is the need to train young researchers in how to engage in policy process. And I'm a researcher myself. I'm trained in veterinary medicine, and I didn't have even almost 10 minutes of training in how to engage in policy processes when I was a PhD student 30 years ago. So us as researchers, we are experts in producing science reports and publications. But once we've done that, we go back to the laboratories and the research. But how to train the young generation of researchers to take part and drive these engagement processes and dialogues, I think that's very important. And we've also seen, and to be able to support the researchers, we also need to support the academic institutes for them to set up frameworks allowing researchers to engage in policy processes, because there's so much information, so much knowledge that needs to be used to improve the policies. And Beth Crawford, she mentioned the bottom-up approach, and that's also something that has been very obvious for us, as problems and solutions concerning food security, they're complex and often very context and site-specific. So there need to be a good collaboration and communication between researchers, all kinds of stakeholders, policymakers, decision makers, and so forth, at the local level, because once these change processes have started, they sort of trickle up in the system. And we have seen some of the projects we support are fantastic collaborators. They have already been able to really show some changes. So that were some key learnings in brief. And then your next question was how to marry research, policy, and practice in a better way. You know, I could talk about that for hours. I will not do that. But I do believe that researchers and academia as a whole should perhaps be given a stronger role in, and capacity in disseminating the knowledge that exists within the academic institutes, not just generating the knowledge, but also how to disseminate it and how to make practical use of it. And of course, there are challenges with the current system at university, which prioritizes academic merits and less engagement in these processes. So that's something that the universities have to improve. And also how to build structures at the universities and institutes to enable researchers to take more active part and not having them become like ivory towers. I think that would be important. And lastly, I mention again, it's very close to my heart, but train the young researchers, because that's the key to create sustainability. Thank you. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sophia. I just see that Adama Boro has joined us. So Adama is our 7th panelist who joining us from Burkina Faso. He's the Director General with Ministry of Agriculture, Pastoralism and Forestry. And Adama, very welcome. So Carlos.
Yes,
So
can you hear me?
Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Carlos, IFPRI is an important institute and think tank when it comes to food system policy, right? And you all had this PIM program for 10 years, analyzing policies, promoting sustainable intensification for smallholders. I was just wondering if we can focus here on technological innovations. What are the key main policy bottlenecks in promoting technological innovations for sustainable intensification? How can we bring policy to a speed of technological innovations? No, it's now technological innovations is evolving very fast and it's really happening in a fast speed. Can policy processes catch up to it and enable better environment? Can you tell us a bit about that? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thanks a lot for inviting me to the to this event today. Very happy to talk about innovation. So my experience, as you were saying before, my experience in PIM for the last, let's say, 10 years, also before PIM started, was specifically on one of the biggest sustainable agriculture intensification program in Africa, but also I was affiliated with a similar agriculture intensification program in South Asia, and we have been looking at, we have been working on practices, both traditional, more maybe traditional technologies, such as crop rotation, intercropping, crop diversity, trying to spur crop diversity, but also looking at, of course, improve varieties, but also trying to test and validate some more advanced technologies, use of cover crops that now are becoming, let's say, normal, but maybe 10 years ago were not that normal. So use of cover crops, no-tillage systems, crop residue management, integrated pest management, double up legumes, crop cluster integration, agroforestry, and precision farming, etc. So, and the policy bottlenecks. So the bottlenecks from a policy perspective is are two or three, I would say. So the first is that policymakers, let's say, almost by definition, by nature of policy, try to maximize their immediate political support. So they tend to enact policies with short-term benefits, policies that bring short-term benefits. Also because they're associated, these policies, to a higher adoption rate than those that look at long-term benefits. So, for example, take the example of improved varieties, or maybe use of fertilizer, higher rate of fertilization rate, higher rate of fertilizer. Well, this of course is a short-term benefit policy, but we don't know down the line what are the effects on the environment. So it's, let's say, relatively easy to test and validate in agricultural trials, for example, different fertilization rate, but still the long-term consequence on environmental sustainability are unknown. So well, probably an exception is improved varieties, because again, improved varieties can have political support. Often political support is there, but as I was involved in this process, for example, in Malawi, then certification of improved varieties is a long process, so it takes a long time. So let me give an example of this short-term versus long-term. So of course, the example is well known. So the Asian Green Revolution. So technological innovation has driven the skyrocketing increase in productivity, and is accompanied by more functioning output markets in Asia. However, again, what are the long-term effects on the environment? And these, especially these innovations especially that boost productivity, are welcomed by farmers. But policy aimed at innovation for sustainable intensification are very unlikely to receive strong political support, because they involve also cost from the farmer perspective, labor cost that maybe in most cases that they can't afford. So what are the solutions for that? The solutions are for one, support for more forward-looking and, let's say, visionary leaders who have the courage and ambition in some cases to implement long-term policies, and sometimes sacrificing their immediate political support. Then the second is design an effective system of incentives for adoption. So we talk about incentive, adoption, outcome pillars. So without incentive, there is no adoption, and without adoption, there are no outcomes. And finally, I wouldn't stress enough this factor is partnership with the private sector. So we are always confined with working with the public institutions on the public policies, but we need to step up our effort. I mean, especially in the CG centers, on the partnership with the private sector. From our side, from the side of the researchers that I'm coming from, we need to provide more evidence and research especially on trade-off of these innovations, because they cannot satisfy and increase all the dimensions, all the domains. We call the 5 sustainable innovation domains. So we need to look at trade-off, and we need to have judgment calls on where we would like to have, in which domains we would like to have this innovation to have more impact among different type of incentives. So how different incentive types will complement one another to achieve the desired outcomes. So indeed, multidisciplinary programs that incorporate social, economic, and productivity components are more likely to succeed in developing countries. But again, we need to be cognizant of these bottlenecks, and we can propose this solution. Thank you. I will stop here. I think you're muted. I cannot hear.
Sorry, thanks. So let us move to Guy, who will bring a donor point of view and bridge sort of global perspective with country-level experiences. And Guy, you are very much part of the Desira initiative by European Commission, and TAP-AIS project is part of it. And concretely, what the Desira initiative is doing in terms of strengthening this nexus between innovation and policy, and what have you learned so far? Guy, we cannot hear you somehow. You are not muted, but we cannot hear you. So, no, we still cannot hear you. Maybe if you just use your computer mic and unplug your headphone, will that help? Maybe while Guy is figuring his mic out, let us listen from Colombia, because Colombia has a very interesting experience. When Lucas, who was very much involved in the development and relation of innovation law in Colombia. You know, in many countries, innovation is a high priority, but not many countries have a policy or law in place to, support the innovation process. And so, Juan Lucas, we would really love to hear from you. What was the main drivers of this law, and how does this law enable innovation in practice?
Thank you, Germa, and I hope you can hear me. If you can,
yes, we hear you.
Okay, give me a heads up. Okay, great. So, no, to your question, and I'm very excited to be in one of these initial panels of the Science Innovation Forum of FAO. I think it's a great initiative from the chief scientists that I welcome, and this specific discussion around innovation, I think it's critical. So, to your question, I would like to tell a very little story, but very important, of a lot of significance, which is that from 2011 to 2016, the Colombian government entered negotiations with a 50-year-old guerrilla called the FARC that took, and they were rural-based. It was a rural-based peasant kind of guerrilla that, of course, distorted itself a bit towards the end. But that negotiation was very hard, very complex, and finalized in 2016 with a very deep agreement on the reforms the country would need to undertake in a number of areas. And that, of course, the first chapter of the agreement reached was about agrarian development and agrarian reform. So right after the law, after that agreement was reached and the peace was signed, then we were asked, and I was by then a Colombian civil servant leading the National Agricultural Research Institute, to see how we looked at the enabling environment, normative, etc., to implement the treaty. And we took advantage of a fast-track law that facilitated development of new legal frameworks in Congress. And we were able, on the 19th of June of 2017, last day of Congress, so the next day, all of the efforts would have been lost, to get the final approval in Congress of a law that's unique in many countries, that creates the Colombian National Innovation System for Agriculture. And this is the law 1876, of 2017, and I would invite you to look at it and find it in the web, as I think it's an important read for this discussion. What this law does, and I may say that this, after the law was enacted, government changed, and a government that was against the approval of the peace treaty went into power. So the implementation of the law was slowed significantly. But now we got a new government which comes from the left that's very committed to the implementation of the peace agreement, the full implementation. So in talking to the Minister of Agriculture in the past week, there's a huge commitment to see this law being fully implemented. So this law brings together three elements. The one, the knowledge, science, technology generation, attending and responding to demand. So how you capture demand from the ground, from communities, understand well what that demand means, and align your science, your research capacity to respond to that demand. So there is a lot of governance of the science, and that's one of the elements. The second element, and we've heard it today from Per, when he talked about education. There is a subsystem of education looking at both formal and informal education and elements that are critical, such as competencies, skills, etc., for example, to deliver on the third element, which is, I think, the central subsystem of the law, which is the creation of a national service of agricultural extension. And agricultural extension is not technical assistance. Agricultural extension is about the farmer, its family, its surroundings, its his or her territory, and how through building social capacity with the skills of an extension service that's kind of the family doctor in many ways, that understands the culture, builds from the ground, accompanies in a systematic way that farmer and that community, helps building that capital that's not necessarily crop directed or animal directed, but that it's about planning, that it's about balancing production with the ecosystem services, with the environment, etc. So it's a super exciting time. We have a lot of the agencies of the Colombian government preparing themselves, aligning, organizing the budget, working with the universities, working with the financial sector, etc., to get everything in place. So next year, 2023, we will see, after 5 years, finally, this agricultural innovation law is starting to be fully implemented, which would be historical, and I think it's an amazing opportunity, not only for Colombian development, socioeconomic development, but probably a very important benchmark for other countries, as of course South-South collaboration is absolutely critical, so we can grow and sort our problems together. That's all I wanted to share for the time being. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Juan Carlos. It's very exciting, and we're looking forward to following the implementation of this law in Colombia. So, Guy, have your mic too.
Do you hear me?
Perfect. So,
Good.
floor is yours, Guy. You hear the question.
Thank you very much for this panel, interesting panel. So you mentioned the Desiree initiative funded by the EU. So we support different research and innovation projects in Africa, Asia, Latin America to boost innovation. But we have to give a sense to innovation. We want to promote innovation, inclusive innovation, social innovation, technological innovation, aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's not just about what you mentioned just before. It's not just about transferring new technology to improve productivity. It's also to help people to have a better life and to improve nutrition and food security. I think it's quite important to mention the objective, what we want to achieve through innovation. So we really trust that what is quite important is to have participatory research, to build partnership and network for designing and implementing research and innovation projects. So it's really something important for us to work on mechanisms strengthening interaction between the different type of stakeholders to really support innovation. So it's go beyond support to research or support to advisory services, is to strengthen the capacity of actors to innovate. And so first I want to mention that policy, it's important for research innovation. We talk about dialogue between research and policy, but first there is a link between policy and research and innovation. So there is a need to have let's say, conducive environment for research and innovation to be able to, let's say, to experiment, to be able to scale innovation and to mainstream new mechanisms, new institution, new technology to address the food system transition. So policy is important for research and innovation. To go beyond this first element, I think what is quite important is to strengthen the capacity of research innovation project researchers, organization to interact with policymakers. It's one main lesson. Many research and innovation projects with the DESIREE initiative are not fully equipped to interact with policymakers. It's not just to present at the end of the project, to present results and to have interaction. We need to have a dialogue at the beginning of the project with policymakers, first to take into account their demand and to adapt the research innovation project based on their demand, but also to build trust with policymakers and to be sure there is a kind of co-construction with policymakers. There are so many studies which are not used, so many scientific results which are not used by policymakers. And in fact, one main lesson to be sure that policymakers are willing and able to take into account the scientific results, there is a need to interact with them at the beginning of the process. So it's a partnership. It's not just a dialogue, a final dialogue. It's really a partnership to be built. And researcher, Sophia, you mentioned young researcher, but all the researcher organizations have to learn how to work. The second thing is we need to interact with policymakers at different levels. You mentioned local level, but also national level, international level. So in fact, in many cases, research innovation projects think that the interaction with policymakers is linked to interaction with policymakers at national level. But we need also to interact with policymakers at territorial level, local level, national level, different level. So it's a learning process for research, how to work with policymakers to be sure the result is taken on board by the new policies. And the last elements we learned, we need to have some research on our research studies, work on how to design, how to build innovative policy on innovation. It's not just about transfer of knowledge, you mentioned that. It's more complex, but how to do that? It's quite an issue. We talk about, Juan Lucas, you talked about agricultural innovation system in Colombia, but how to make it operational? It's a huge issue for actors at local level, national level, to make it operational. And maybe we need more thinking how to address this issue. For example, it's the TAP-AIS project managed by TAP and funded by EU too. And the TAP-AIS project you are part of is an effort to have some investment to work on how to design innovative policy to support innovation. And for me, there are different type of research or thinking we need. First, the incentive. Carlo, you mentioned incentives to support innovation. How to design these incentives from the first step of the innovation process to the large scale of the innovation. And we need different type of incentives depending on the step of the innovation process. So we need to work on to identify best practices in different countries dealing with innovation platforms, how to support innovation networks, how to support incubators, depending on the country, depending on the context. How does it work, and how we can make these mechanisms more sustainable and more efficient. So we need to have more element. And for sure, you mentioned Degui, at the beginning, you mentioned how we can strengthen capacity, and Juan Lucas too. It's one of the main points you mentioned, and how we can strengthen technical capacity for sure, but also functional capacity, because many training system try to support technical capacity, but not a lot are able to address the functional capacity and to strengthen at local level farmers, NGO, farmers organization to strengthen their functional capacities, especially to transform the system and to innovate. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Guy. We are a bit behind time, but we might be okay as a whole till 3:30. Now let us go to Sarah, Malawi. Sarah, previously you said that policy, dialogues, and implementation structures are the key for achieving policy objectives, right? So in Malawi, how do you facilitate the interface between innovation and policies? And what are your experiences at the country level to engage multi-stakeholder processes? Engage multi-stakeholders in such policy processes.
Thank you so much, Dake. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. For Malawi, I think we have really taken policy and innovation dialogue to a level where much stakeholder involvement is the key issue. So the first thing that we consider, or that we have considered to facilitate the interface between innovation and policy, is to understand that this is more of a chicken and egg relationship, where you cannot know where it is starting from, but policy direction can influence innovation. And then at the same time, innovation can also influence policy, because overall a policy is supposed to be a guiding framework to the aspirations and the development goals, not just in the short term, but in the long run. And oftentimes I emphasize the point that a policy is not something that should cover a short-term goal, but a long-term vision. And then at the same time, we have innovation that is trying to bring out new ideas, new methods, the novelty that can bring the development or the aspirations that are there in the policy framework. So we try as much as possible to make sure that we don't create a line and say a policy ends here and innovation starts here. We want it to be a continuous process to make sure that as we're learning from innovation, we are influencing policy, but also at the same time, policies are influencing the innovation that is supposed to break the barriers and the systemic challenges that are there in terms of development. Going to the experiences that we've had in Malawi in bringing out innovation and policy, the first thing is the engagement of the multi-stakeholders in the policy process. As I said, a policy is a long-term vision that is broad-based. So stakeholder engagement is important because they are the aspirations of different people or different institutions that are supposed to be within the framework of development. So we have recognized that diversity in opinion is key. It is important to listen to as many people as possible so that we are able to generate the knowledge that is needed for us to come up with priorities in terms of policy processes. So we bring as many people as possible, we listen to them, we understand through different platforms, policy dialogues, policy dissemination areas, and other related issues. So we take a holistic approach to the development of the policy rather than focusing on one specific issue to make sure that our aim of the policy framework, by involving different stakeholders, respond to national and long-term goals in the end. At the same time, we also allow stakeholders to identify themselves within the policy space. So public policies, since I come from the public institution, are not only for a public institution, because public policies are supposed to cater for national development. So by bringing different stakeholders on the table, we would like them to identify themselves. Where do they place themselves? What is their niche in the policy framework? That way, we are able in the long term to work with them every day to try and understand and reach the aspirations that are there in the policy framework. So good collaboration and taking a systems approach helps us to go through the development process, as well as to achieve the innovativeness that is required within the policy space. And as the stakeholders are identifying themselves, they also, this process also helps us to get the buy-in, which is important for implementation. Once a policy is in place, what is key is the implementation and achieving. So when you move with the stakeholders, the process of multi-stakeholder does not stop when, let's say, the framework has been in place, when the framework has been instituted. It goes beyond that. So every day, as I said, it's a chicken and egg. There is no stopping. It has to be a continuous process. This should never be a never-ending stage where we are moving with the stakeholders at the process, at the identification of the priority areas, as you are implementing, as they are implementing their programs, how do they place themselves within the policy space? And then how do we also, as different stakeholders, come together to be accountable to our priorities that we had set at a different place? So policy dissemination workshops have been key. Policy dialogues, especially through like the support of the project that TAP-AIS is doing, is key, because then it brings that multi-stakeholder approach in terms of taking up issues that are in the policy to achieve development, innovation, as well as the systems approach. Key challenges have been, oftentimes people think a policy should stop when you develop it, and then when you have instituted it, and then everybody goes their way until you come to a time when you have to maybe evaluate. But it should not be like that. We need to continuously be engaging together through technical, financial, and any other means as different stakeholders take the process of policy as a never ending, because innovation is an everyday thing. Stakeholder involvement is an everyday thing, and moving together is a process that we need to go together. So in brief, what I can say that agriculture innovation systems are really important for policy processes, identifying innovation niches, and then facilitating that stakeholder process to make sure that development goals are not cornered in one position by one institution, but they are taken up by different stakeholders all throughout the process. Thank you so much, Deg.
Thank you so much for this intervention, Sarah, so succinct and concrete. And before going to Burkina Faso, let us go to Cambodia. We have His Excellency Chan Sarut, who led the policy process in Cambodia and recently completed a bottom-up policy process to promote conserving agriculture and sustainable intensification. And in this process, he really emphasized that it had to be a bottom-up process. And so I would like you, Dr. Sarut, to tell us why it is important to make the policy process bottom-up, And what are the challenges you face in terms of engaging different stakeholders in this bottom-up process?
Thank you, DG. Dear ladies and gentlemen, today is my great pleasure to attend the side event on the participatory multi-stakeholder policy dialogue process to support the agricultural innovation and experiences organized by FAO today. It is very interesting to learn from the various experts about the agricultural innovation. And I would like to share with you that from the what we did and what we try to do and what we want to improve the agricultural sector in Cambodia as well. In Cambodia, we have the major concern with the soil erosion as well as the land degradation. It is also very much concern for the agricultural development in Cambodia as well, because even sometimes the farmer or the stakeholder or agriculture producer use a lot of the like the chemical fertilizer, or sometimes they did not do properly on the land preparation as well. So far, we also introduced the several agricultural innovation application. However, we have several obstacles, like the the expert mentioned. Even sometimes that we need to support from the different actors. It's not from the public sector alone, but we need also the private sector, the community, and also the development partner to work with as well. So there's come that we observe that even in Cambodia, we already introduced the conservation agriculture since 2004. However, we cannot scale up more than, I think, around 20 years. And from my observation and the experience, I think that conservation is very benefit, especially for Cambodia, who the country who face a lot of the irrigation system, and we do only one crop per year, and we lose the opportunity after harvesting. Most of the farmers just burn the stubble, and also they just left the agricultural land, they dry something like this. Oh, it is a lot of the disadvantage, and then from year to year, you know, the soil erosion and also the land degradation are very much concerned. And that is why that we also observe that the conservation agriculture and sustainable implementation is also very benefit, especially at the current challenges due to the rising oil and fertilizer price are going up and reduce costs in the land preparation as well. And however, like what I said, that because of the lack of the participation from the largest actor, so especially the private sector, the community, and researcher, the practitioner as well. And that is why we formed recently in 2020, we established so-called the Cambodia Conservation Agriculture Sustainable Integration Consortium, in order to bring all the different actors to work together, addressing the issue in order to make the conservation agriculture and sustainable integration more accessible to farmers through the market actor offering the services. We call the CASIC, established by the Ministry of Culture, Forestry and Fishery in Cambodia in May 2020. So it is, we can say that the CASIC is the bottom-up approach We did not have any resources from the project, but we start up from nothing. That we bring the different stakeholders that they do differently on the conservation agriculture activity. But it is a chance that we bring them to work together under one umbrella. So we are the one who are sitting in the middle. We bring all of different actors to have a chance to meet to each other. And we also try to reduce a gray zone. That means the different actor they cannot do it, but the CACIC can also find a way and facilitate and assist them to accept, and also they could work together. For example, when we introduce the field demonstration introduced by the researcher, but after that the farmer want to apply the conservation agriculture, but no anyone can respond. But it is a time that we also can bring the private sector to come with us. They can provide the cover crop, they can provide the service like the machinery, they can also provide the technical support, something like this. With the researcher, with the lecturer from the university, with the practitioner, with the private sector, and with the community. So we are the one who try to support them. And the structure of the CACIC consists of the two layers. The one we call the steering committee, the second one we call the executive board, and we also have subcommittee. At the CACIC steering committee, we work with 6 line ministries, 1 council for agriculture and rural development, and 1 representative from the private sector, they call it chamber of commerce. Can you imagine that, like from the previous, the experts said that to bring the different actors to work together is not easy. So how can you imagine that to bring different line ministry to work together under CACIC? It's not easy. It takes time, and sometimes it to be patient, try to work hard, convince all the different line ministry to accept and work together and under the one direction. So we did, and we tried, and we success. And at the CACIC executive board, we work with 7 line technical department under Ministry of Agriculture, the 1 agriculture university, 1 research institution, and 9 provincial department, 3 partner from CIRAT, Sweet Contact, and Center of Excellence on Sustainable Agriculture Intensification. So now we can say that at the steering committee is also the 1 headage, and another one at the executive board, also another 1 headage. So we did not have any resources, but we try, and even we initiate to introduce the fundraising among the steering committee member and executive board, and with the partner, we try to do it step by step. It's called the bottom-up approach, not the top-down. So the top-down easy to do it, but if we look and we what happened after the end of the project, what happened? We look for the sustainability. So now we did not do anything, but we just bring all the different actors to work together. They can do anything what they did with their own resources, but when they have any problem, they have any concern, they come and meet and talk together and find the solution together.
Thank you.
However, yeah, we have also the structure in place. What we can do more to convince the policy maker, like what the different stakeholders said, the different experts said. Very another difficult, but we try, and also thank to the FAO for providing us the support. We organize the policy, the dialogue at the sub-national level and also the national level, identify the challenges, and we found that there are 6 challenges. The one, the low access to equipment, appropriate technology for conservation agriculture, low overall knowledge level and limited training opportunity, limited financial incentive, and low awareness of existing policy and market opportunity, and limited multi-stakeholder coordination. And we also find three solutions for scaling up. The one that make use the current policy framework to support conservation agriculture, enable access to conservation agriculture technology for farmers, improve available training, education opportunity on conservation agriculture. So with the classic, we also introduced the systematic approach that consists of 4 dimensions. The first, we call the research. It is the Center for Excellence. It is the 5-year study plan developed to be the aspiration for the regional center for excellence on conservation agriculture and agro-technology. Second, extension. We call the Merkasika, the friend of the farmer friend. It is a public-private model. Piloting is underway and mainstreaming in the government system. Third, we call the skilled human resources. It is an internship guided model established. It has been initiating and introducing into the curriculum. And fourth, the technology and practice, cover crop and machinery. It is also the service provider from the private sector who provides service on cover crop and machinery.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sarwat. Let you finish.
Sorry, just very important point that now this systematic approach is piloting with various stakeholders, a 3-year pilot on setting up certification and verification system, including carbon credit. Thank you for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And you know, there is so much interesting stuff happening in Cambodia, and CASIC is a very interesting mechanism and taking lots of attention in Iraq. And this actually links very nicely with what Adama Boro is going to talk about in Burkina Faso. So Adama, I will just pass it over to you. And if you can give us quick talk on your very interesting initiative on the interministerial cell. Up to you, Adam.
Hello.
Yes, hear you well.
Hello. Hello, morning, everybody. Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Hello?
Yes, go on. Go on, Adama. We hear you well.
Okay, thank you. I'm very happy to be invited on this important side event. And we are very interested to speak about the mechanism of guidance units for agriculture innovation system in Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is an Sahaelian country. Its agricultural economic is highly exposed to climate hazards, with 80% of the active population live from agriculture. For this region, the country authorities have always paid particularly attention to scientific, technical research and innovation, with the creation of a ministry actually dedicated to research and innovation. However, innovation in Burkina Faso has been roundly considered as an integrated part of research. But in these recent years, there has been a danger not only to make a distinction between scientific research and innovation, but also to highlight agricultural innovation. In addition of the studies conducted in Burkina Faso with the TAP-AIS project have shown that the functioning of a national agricultural innovation system is characterized by a lack of synergy and coherence in support for innovation. This leads to compartments or sectoral decisions that do not favor to emergence of a consensual or orientation and the proposal of appropriate solution to create a political and institutional environment favorable to agricultural innovation. So, in this necessary to create a policy guidance unity to improve the performance of the agricultural innovation system in Burkina Faso, it will make possible to struggle the synergy of action and to better coordinate, evaluate, and capitalize on agricultural innovation action for greater efficiency and impact. So how we establish this guidance unity? In order to create this system for guidance the guidance for a unity for the national innovation system, we carried out an evaluation of the national innovation system with the support of TAP-AIS projects in order to listen the actors and on the existing policy instruments that can facilitate agricultural innovation. This study carried out in last year demonstrated that the need to set up the performance framework for policy dialogue in using related to agricultural innovation. This same recommendation was made in a TAP-AIS project during the policy dialogue organized by the project. Subsequently, policy consultation were conducted during this year to identify with the policy actors the relevant mechanism with potential impact in national agricultural innovation system with the view to setting up the policy cell and agricultural innovation, including the subcellule for that will take care of monitoring evaluation. The result of this policy consultation will be discussed during a workshop with key actors of the National Agricultural Innovation System institutional ecosystems. The workshop will alone to deepen the reflection and to co-construct the condition for the effective implementation and efficiency and sustainable functioning of the guidance cell. So how can such mechanisms be sustained? The sustainability of the policy dialogue platform in the National Agricultural Innovation System depends in first one on the structure that will be the lead. Second, on the mode of operating the platforms, and third, on financing or monitoring, evaluation, and capitalization of the action of this units. That the policy consultation have made to have the lead structure will be the state structure autonomous in this in this management, and which a certain autonomy to facilitate the mobilization of actors. Okay. This is the permanent secretary of the coordination of agriculture sectoral in our country, in Burkina Faso.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Adama. Sorry to cut you short if I did. We are quite bit over time, and the few minutes to sort of close the panel. Just, there have been a number of questions, and many of them have already answered by the panelists and other colleagues here. And there has been really active chat going on, people bouncing ideas back and forth in the chat. So this is great. Just on the Q&A, if we can take 2 to 3 questions really briefly. There is one I would like Juan Carlos Lucas to respond. It's about the role of producer organizations at regional and continental level, as well as indigenous people in the multi-stakeholder inclusive dialogues to sharpen policies, innovations, etc. So if you can give really, less than 1 minute answer, if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to say that one of the very critical elements in the negotiation of the peace agreement was the rights of indigenous, local communities, peasant communities, etc., and the framing of the national innovation system is precisely one that allows to first value the knowledge and the traditions and the culture of those communities, and acknowledging that knowledge through the different subsystems of the service, and in full agreement, bottom up from the local planning upwards and then back down again to really facilitate very specific responses that that are adapted to that demand and to those territories. So It's a law that's very specific to those demands of these special specific communities, but also aggregates and supports overarching levels that really support to have a cohesive framing that works across the board. So that's for the local. Then for national and regional, it's about cooperation, it's about benchmarking, it's about exchanges of experience, and that's where regional organizations bring a lot of value as well. I hope I was short enough.
Okay, perfect, fine. Also, I see that Sarah's typing response to that question as well. This is great. If you can just pick a question and contribute to in the Q&A, that would be great that's for all the panelists. There is a question from Gil about the policy co-design and the engagement of stakeholders, which we have spoken a lot, I think. But there is one particular thing she talks in her question, is disengagement from external funding. How can we make the capacity development as well as policy processes designed disengaged from external funding? Maybe would you like to take that question with very brief answer? Thanks.
It's not an easy question. I think first, there are many cases where there is a policy dialogue without external funding, without project. For example, in Senegal, you mentioned dialogue between farmers' organization and national government. For example, with ROPA is without support of external funding, or at least without one main donor trying to have a top-down approach to monitor the policy dialogue. So I really think there are many examples. After that, I think it's because it's question of balance of power between different actors. So it's not an easy question because it's really depending on the situation and the context. Some countries are open to have a dialogue, so it's quite not easy, but you can support, actors can engage with a dialogue with some national governments because they are open to this dialogue. In other countries, it's quite difficult. Even in countries where you have an open mind, when you have a government open to dialogue, it takes time. It's not just a dialogue, it's a long-term dialogue. And you need many years to be sure that this dialogue can lead to concrete outcomes and desirable outcomes. So for me, yes, we need to strengthen this capacity to have actors more autonomous, but also the societies, farmers organization, NGO also have to take the lead and try to fight without donor support to establish this dialogue. And you have many examples in Latin America, for example, too.
Yeah. Maybe would you be able to put some of, if there is such a resource they can look into, put it in answer as well for her. So if there is any links to these examples you mentioned, that she could go and find more. And there is one question about the students. Sarah, Sophia, would you like to take that, since you talked about youth and you know how important to engage youth in policy processes? This is a question from Nepal. And so apparently there is a process ongoing, and the university students, how can they engage such ongoing processes?
Yeah, I saw that question and I was thinking about it. It's highly relevant, and there's no.
Make your answer very short, and then maybe add in the Q&A also.
I think we should start. You know, it's a lot about communication and making contacts, and Guy also emphasized that to make sure the students, you know, they can visit meetings and they could try to take part of discussions and so forth to start like building the platforms. But there's no quick answers, but try to engage the ways that seems to be possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. So last question, Sarah, it's for you. How can we measure policy process become successful? This is a big question, isn't it? But you can give it a try in a very quickly. briefly.
Okay, so as I started out with, policies objectives aim at achieving a broad long-term objective. So the idea of measuring process is to see how have you moved on the ladder of development in the process. And that comes from innovations that are coming up, new ways of doing things, how are we breaking the systemic challenges that are in place, and then how are we moving on the ladder of economic as well as social and environmental indicators that we measure ourselves against when we are setting up these policies. Thank you, Dick.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah, so much. Always so complete and succinct. So before I hand it back to our officer in charge of Office of Innovation, Beth Crawford, let me just shout out some keywords from our panel discussion, okay? And so some of the things keep repeated coming out: partnership, collaboration, engagement of diverse stakeholders and listening to diverse opinions, and bottom-up approach, the demand-driven policies, no? And then co-creation of innovation, engaging younger generations, and also capacity development for youth and other institutions have to engage policy processes effectively, and setting up policy instruments such as incentive mechanisms, and engaging local actors and leaders. And then, Guy, you mentioned about what do we achieve through innovation. It's very important to think about promoting responsible innovation in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. And then we also, Sarah, you talked about seamless process. I really love that. It's a chicken egg thing, which all has a push and pull effect to each other, but this process has to be seamless feedback process to the policies as well as the implementation side. And then getting buy-in from the various stakeholders and those who will be part of the implementation. And Dr. Sarot, you talked so much about the importance of local level, understanding the local level, policy bottlenecks at the local level in order to have that discussion in the policy dialogue and think about policy solutions. And Juan Lucas, together with you, we are very excited about this innovation law in Colombia, and looking forward to following it very closely. And there you talked about understanding demand again, the community-based approach, and building social capital, and which is very important. We're not only, when we talk about, he and the pair in his presentation also talked about technical versus functional capacities, no? And when we talk about innovation, and often we talk about technical issues and technologies, but to make those technologies work effectively, we do need other things. Social capital is one of very important elements. And so, the interest of time, I will stop here and hand it back to you, Beth. And thank you so much, dear panelists. You guys been extremely interesting. I was very bad moderator, not to keep the time very precisely and cut you short. And also, I thank those who really actively exchanged in the chat box. Beth, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dagian. Wow, what a really great and interesting discussion. Thank you so much to all the panelists and the participants. We really have heard many excellent examples of successful policy processes to support innovation in the agri-food sector, as just also highlighted and summarized by Degi. So I'll be very brief. I just wanted to say that, as you may know, the Office of Innovation, through this TAP-AIS project, is working in 9 countries to strengthen capacities for agricultural innovation. 4 of the TAP-AIS countries were represented in today's panel discussion. So that's Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Colombia, and Malawi. But there are also policy dialogue processes underway or completed in Eritrea, Lao PDR, Pakistan, Rwanda, and Senegal. So altogether, these experiences with multi-stakeholder policy dialogue are generating powerful lessons learned and good practices. And the Office of Innovation plans to capitalize on this and share in an upcoming publication with a global audience. So we're looking forward to that. So together, these efforts, including events for knowledge exchange and generating new ideas, such as today's webinar, will support policies that can enable agricultural innovation. And as we know, enabling agricultural innovation is key to sustainable agri-food systems transformation for better production, better nutrition, better environment, and a better life, leaving no one behind. So in closing, let me thank again the panelists for their inspiring presentations. And let me thank too all the participants for your active participation in the chat and in the Q&A. It was really very exciting to see. And of course, let me thank the team and the Office of Innovation for organizing this excellent side event. As I mentioned in my introduction, this is the beginning of the FAO Science and Innovation Forum. There's a very large number of interesting side events this week and an exciting program of main events next week. So we encourage you to attend as many events as possible to share and learn together in order to harness science, technology, and innovation for transforming our agri-food systems. Thank you very much.